Okay, hi, I'm Bill Doherty, and I want to welcome the viewers to another edition of Bill's Bullpen. And, as I've talked about before, the program is designed to give people some idea of what goes on in the local community in the region about things that contribute to what I'd call a quality of life here. And with me today is Sheriff Jim Cummings. Jim, thank you very much for coming.
Good to be here, Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Jim, one of the things I want to get into for the folks, before we start on your job at the jail, is that you've had a very interesting career in law enforcement. I know that you were in the state police before you became an investigator for Rawlins, over at the county, and that you probably have stories to tell about that. And then, has it been 25 years now you've been at the jail?
Almost a little over 22 and a half.
22 and a half. And I do remember the first time you ran, and it should have been a template for anybody that runs for public office, because you were running against Tommy Cahere, also a good friend.
Yep.
And you were presenting yourself, if you want a cop, elect me, and if you want a social worker, elect Tommy.
Yeah.
And then you became more of a social worker than anybody could expect. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because I don't think that people really appreciate what law enforcement really does, because it's called a correctional institution, and I believe that you're I call an exemplar for what a correctional institution could be. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about some of the programs that you run, to help people get back into the community.
Sure, Bill. On the correction side of the sheriff's office, we have two entities. We have the jail, where we hold people that are being held by the courts on bail or without bail, and that's the whole gamut. Every offense, we have people who are charged with homicide and numerous drug cases and things of that nature. And then where our rehabilitation side comes in is the House of Correction, where anyone who's sentenced to 2.5 years or less comes to the House of Correction. They're not getting 15-year sentences. If they get those, they go to a state facility. So we know when we get someone sentenced to the House of Correction that they're going to go right back into our community. So I've always looked at it as our job is to make them better, try to fix the problem they had that got them incarcerated in the first place. And I tell the staff all the time that people are sent here to the House of Correction as punishment, not for punishment. Our job is to try and fix them. And when I first became sheriff, and we were in the old facility down
how well we remember
the hill in Barnstable. We could do very little just because we didn't have the room.
Yes.
We were on top of each other. We had people living in tents and Quonset huts, so there wasn't much we could do as far as rehabilitating people. But when we built the new facility right up here in Bourne, outside of the base, it was like a rebirth. We had room. We were able to have volunteers come in and help us. We have educational programs, naturally, substance abuse programs. About 80% of the folks that get sentenced to the House of Correction have some issue with drugs or alcohol. And
well, I remember you were kind enough to my wife was president of at the time of the Citizens Advisory at DMH for the Cape, and you were kind enough to give her a tour of it, and she was very impressed with the opportunities there were for bringing folks up to speed, and also to deal with what we called dual diagnosis. In other words, you had self-medicating mentally ill, that were there. And I know that maybe people don't know, you have a social worker on staff.
Oh, yeah. We have social workers, and now we have recovery coaches.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, with the opiate epidemic, we really worked hard. In fact, we were the first jail, I believe, in the country to offer Vivitrol, which is non-narcotic injection that lasts a month. And what it does, it deadens the senses in the brain that give you the euphoria from alcohol and opiates. And it's been a great program. It kind of takes away the urges for someone to get back on heroin or prescription opiates. And along with that, we realized that first we realized that we had to do something with Mass Health. What happens in Mass Health, when you go to jail, you lose your insurances.
Yeah, and I never understood that part, because if you needed If you need it most, it's when you've lost everything.
Right, right. And so the problem became when we'd get somebody on Vivitrol, we'd get them detoxed and train them in rehabilitation and how to fight the urges, and then we'd send them back out into the community. But they didn't have health insurance, so they couldn't get the necessary continuum of care, counseling, and things of that nature. So we were able to work. The Mass Sheriffs did this. Work with Mass Health so that now when someone comes to jail, their insurance is just suspended, and we have staff that can get people re-enrolled in Mass Health before they leave. So when they go out the door, they can go right to the counselor's office, and that's an issue they don't have to worry about. But we also have recovery coaches now that follow inmates into the community. They're just there in case they have any type of issue. We found that if someone's in recovery and they hit any kind of a wall, that's a good excuse to start using.
I hear that a lot from my daughter. My daughter's a clinical director up at Taunton State Hospital,
Okay.
and dealing with addictive behavior, and that business about coming up to a wall and not having resources and not having support is the thing that keeps you on that wall.
Right. So we eliminate those issues, and been very successful. We have a good rate of recovery. Actually, our recidivism rate is extremely low for our residential substance abuse treatment program. It goes between 14 and 17% recidivism rate when the national average is about 60%. So it's a very successful program.
Do you connect with the band program?
I'm not sure.
That's the one where they give them alternatives to going, to going to be incarcerated, and they stay in the community, but they have to meet certain criteria. It was run by one of the judges down in the Superior Court.
Okay, that's part of the drug court?
Yeah, drug court. That's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we work very close with Judge Julian is
That's it, yeah.
running that program
Right.
now, and actually. A judge from Falmouth Court is also running a drug court, and we work with them very closely. And a lot of times, what the judge will do is they'll send us to somebody to hold until they can find a bed out in the community, or they'll send them to us to get them on Vivitrol. And once we get them on Vivitrol, they'll go back to the drug court, and the judge will release them back into the community and follow them, through the drug court. So it's worked very well, and there's a good partnership there.
Talk a little bit about some of the what I call work release programs that you have.
Sure, they've been actually the virus has pretty much decimated them.
I know, yeah.
We've been locked in, since this started, when they haven't been sending any inmates out or allowing any volunteers in. So we've really been kind of in a hiatus. But the community work programs were available to any governmental agency or nonprofit in Barnstable County. And I think over my 22 and a half years, I think we've painted every church and every police station and every fire station. We built dugouts and press boxes. We do a lot of work in Bourne. When I got the jail sited in Bourne, we made a promise that the town of Bourne would have a priority.
Yes, we remember that.
And we've given them that. As a matter of fact, I have a list now from Tony Schiavi, the town administrator, calls me all the time waiting for us to start because he has some work that he wants us to do. And so it's something that I'm hoping we can get back into soon, and that includes picking up papers on the side of the road. We haven't been out there to do that in over a year, and I see some volunteers out there doing it, and I see the highway department out there doing it. So at least there's some activity there, but we also do that when we're in full swing.
Well, you left out one agency you did a lot of work for. I was on the housing authority down in Harwich for 25 years, and you were the guys that came in and painted all of the apartments when they rolled over.
Yes, we do that in most towns, as well. So it's a great program, and the inmates are able to give something back into the community, and the community gets some free labor to keep up with with what they have to do.
When the library was open, the Friends used to have a book sale, and I think Dave Neal was the coordinator at that time. Who's replaced Dave Neal? Because I think he's retired too, isn't he?
Dave retired, and now there's a gal, Tracy LaGracia, is the one who's handling the community service requests.
That's good to know, because several of the veterans organizations that I'm involved with are looking for help. let's say, to square away some of their facilities.
Yep.
So Tracy, okay,
Yep.
and probably the public would want to hear that as well.
Sure.
You have a population that's incarcerated. They're held in together, and across the country, what I'd call the concentration of susceptibility to the COVID has been greater, in facilities like yours. How have you dealt with it?
Well, we locked down fairly early. We kept the inmates inside the facility. We didn't let any volunteers come in. The only ones who came in with, obviously staff. But we've been very fortunate in that we haven't had a single inmate come down with the virus in the House of Correction. Yeah, I mean, and it's really been amazing. We have a one housing unit set up as a quarantine unit, so if somebody is sentenced or held, when they come to the jail, they go into the quarantine unit for their first 15 days, so we can keep an eye on them, make sure they don't have the virus. And we also have another unit that's set aside in case we do get somebody who has the virus. They will go into that unit. And again, fortunately, we haven't had to use that unit at all.
Jimmy, that's one thing that I think it touches my heart, and I think that everybody should appreciate the fact that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, it's when you
That's
see,
wonderful.
Yeah, when you see the things in other correctional facilities,
Yes.
People dying, and we haven't even had a case. And actually, I can tell you that people are safer inside the correctional facility than they are out in the street in Barnstable County, as far as getting the virus.
Well, I think that Sean, my good friend Sean O'Brien, is doing his best.
Oh, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
My wife actually got her shots at the college at Four Seas, and I drove her down there, and it was well organized and well done.
Well, as it turned out, when they opened it up, I was being lazy. When they opened it up, I figured I'd just hop online and do it. And 15 minutes later, 1,300 things were gone, and I wasn't. But I was able. I went, instead of sulking, I went on the Gillette site, and they had one slot open at noontime, and I picked that up and drove up there, and I got my 2 shots up at Gillette. It's $1 million a day operation, and it looks like it.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen and talking to folks down here, that has been in process, and I think it was in the paper the other day that there's a higher percentage of people that have gotten the vaccine on Cape Cod than in other areas. But it's clear that since we're not exactly God's waiting room, but that we have an older population, that
Right.
We had more people who were eligible earlier, and I think that contributed to it. Okay, well, that's such wonderful news to hear, about that piece of it. But as we get opened up, according to what the governor has said, starting at in the end of May, I guess it is, there'll be more opening going on. And what plans do you have for, let's say, for work release programs at that time?
Well, we hope to get them up and running. A problem we're going to have, though, Bill, is for most of this pandemic, the courts have been closed, and there's been a reluctancy to send people to jail just because of what you mentioned with the living conditions and the virus spreading easily. So prior to the pandemic, our inmate count was right up around 425. This morning it was 176. So we don't have a lot of people that we can send out in the community to work. Now the courts are
That's good news, but that is good news.
It is good news in that sense, you know.
Yeah.
But the courts are going to open up. They're going to start doing trials. As a matter of fact, they've leased a portion of a hotel down in Barnstable, and they're going to hold the trials in the hotel. Just because, as you know, the Superior Court doesn't really have enough room for social distancings or any of those requirements.
No, it doesn't. When I consider the rabbit warren that's inside that building, you can't get away from anybody.
No, no. Beautiful building, but not very spacious.
From the outside, yeah. I think you have to go inside to appreciate the elegance of a bygone age, as they say.
Yes.
And even the district court, if you go into there, originally it was a smooth design, but the way they've cut it up and let's say put up walls and everything, it's almost impossible to let's say to practice that. If you go in the magistrate's court over there, you're practically on top of the magistrate, when you're going through that. So yeah,
Right.
that's going to be a while before we see that.
Right,
Yeah.
and we're using a lot more video conferencing for minor hearings, bail reviews and stuff like that, so we don't have to go to the court at all. We have, we use a Zoom or something like that to communicate with the court, and so that's saving us a lot of travel time and travel expense, so that's worked out
Do you
well.
expect to continue with that, especially for the islands?
Yes, the good thing about the pandemic was it got people forced to use the video, so some of the folks who were reluctant to use it now see how it works and how efficient it is, so I think we're going to get more use out of it moving forward.
Well, Jimmy, you're presenting what I'd call an example of a well-run facility, one that recognizes that, as you very correctly said, it's for punishment, not, what was the other part of it?
They're sent to us as punishment,
As punishment, not for punishment.
Right.
And I think that's an important distinction for people to appreciate. We all are in this together, and people sometimes slip. Talk a little bit about the population of the mentally ill that are in your facility.
Yeah, big problem. There's, unfortunately, years ago, the state closed down the public mental facilities, so there's no place to send these people now. So in most instances, the court, they do something in public, and the court sends them up to the correctional facility, and we take somebody that has a mental issue, and we put them in an 8x10 cell, which exasperates their mental health condition and makes them act up further, so they violate jail rules, and so we send them into an isolation situation, so it just makes everything worse. We've come a long way in dealing with mental health. We trained our staff, how to recognize mental illness, different types of mental illness. We have mental health counselors on staff now. They're there now. They're there all the time. We've pretty much done away with isolation. And if we do have somebody that needs to be in restrictive housing, they're seen by a mental health counselor first, and if the counselor says this person can't be put into any type of restricted housing, we don't put them in restricted housing.
Well, what do you do with them?
I mean, we pretty much just have to get them into general population and try to get them to calm down. That's our biggest problem, has been trying to convince the legislature that there are some people who might have mental health issues, but you can't just put them in with other people. They're dangerous,
Well,
and there's no place to send them.
Okay, Jimmy, I've been active as an advocate for the mentally ill for many, many years, and unless a legislature has a relative that's let's say that's decompensated or decompensating and sees it for himself, they don't seem to recognize was it 1 out of 4 are affected, and everybody is related to someone who's having a problem.
Right.
So it's something that we need to spend more time. And we talk about stigma of the mentally ill, but the other issue is when people who are responsible for, let's say, for managing their care, sometimes are not aware of let's say some of the techniques to deal with it. When I remember my wife had arranged a training program for the Barnstable police, and what they did was they put earphones on them. And they had the earphones, with conversation going on in the earphones, and they started yelling at the guy, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that," and they began to recognize that the confusion that a normal person has because there's a voice that's, let's say that's interfering with his understanding somebody talking to him is even worse. So
Right.
I was wondering what kind of training, you give, some of the folks, at your facility.
We have our mental health counselors in the facility actually work with the staff, and every year we have to do so many hours of in-service training for the staff, and mental health training is always part of that, so we're always evolving and moving forward with it. And I just wish the legislature would realize that we need someplace where we can send people that have severe mental illness other than jail.
Amen to that.
Yeah, they seem to be very reluctant to open that type of facility, but.
Well, there's history with that, because when I was doing the advocacy, during the, I think it was back in the Kennedy administration, they closed down all of the mental health hospitals.
Yeah.
And the money was then sent to the communities. And the communities were supposed to be a catchment area for them. And what the communities did was just took the money and put it into the general fund. And then we started to see the rise of the homeless population. And of course, the homeless population is probably the cadre of people who become what we used to call dual diagnosis. They self-medicate. They act out. They get in, and
Right.
they end up in your facility.
Right.
And we've got statistics that show that the difference in expense of putting somebody in your facility to protect them, and indeed that is protecting them, versus treating them, is like 5% of what it costs to have you take care of it. So
Yeah.
I would say that that's a message that we got to work on, all of us have to work on a little bit more, in order to deal with.
Right. I mean, jail is not the place for people that are suffering from mental health issues.
And indeed, the programs that you just, when I was active at the National Association of County Officials, your programs are like a what do you call a poster boy or a template for what other successful programs are. I think Maryland had similar programs for let's say alternatives
Yep.
to incarceration, and the county jails were acting more as let's say a staging area, and then putting people in places where they could really get the help that they needed.
Right. And never to slow down, we just started using tablets, where we made tablets available to the inmates, and they can actually, besides watching movies and stuff like that on their tablets, selected movies that we select for them, we can also put our educational program on there, and we can put all of our other programs on there as well. And we can have, we have a chaplain at the jail, so he can put his religious programs on there, and Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, all have issue to these tablets. And we found that when we gave the inmates the tablets, they do what our kids do. They go to in their case, their cell, and they're in there on their tablet. And if they act up or they do something wrong, you take the tablet away for a week, and it's a carrot and a stick.
Jim, I used to do that when I was a substitute teacher too. So I know it works with the kids. Yeah,
it works very well with the inmates as well.
Some people might define the reason why people go to jail is they haven't lost their childish behavior. And part of it growing up is accepting responsibility and understanding that there are consequences.
Yeah.
Now, in your rehabilitation program, how do you recognize that that an inmate is really understanding and accepting of their responsibility with regard to what they've done?
Well, one of the programs we have that's worked very well is education. We have a lot of folks who come to us who haven't finished high school, and we offer we used to be referred to as a GED program. It's called HiSET now, and we've given about 500 high school equivalency diplomas to inmates, and that's a big boost for them. Just having that diploma helps them get employment, and we found that people who come to us and you take advantage of it and get their HiSET don't come back. So it's worked well.
Let me ask you sort of a follow-on question. In this state, even though you have a felony conviction, you can be restored to your voting privileges.
Right.
Have you seen any instances where people who have gotten their let's say high school equivalency have gone on and let's say have tried to get a job in law enforcement?
None, Bill, come to mind, but they have certainly turned their lives around and made successes of themselves. Every once in a while I'll have a former inmate stop by and give me a business card that they've started. One fellow started a painting company and stopped by to give me his card because he said I'd be willing to hire former inmates, if you have someone that's looking for a job, you know, and you know that's happened more than once. So they certainly do make successes of themselves. But I found that inmates who leave the facility and do well kind of want to forget about that part of their life, so we don't see them back a lot, which is fine. You know, I don't.
Well, employment, you know, after incarceration is something that is of concern since there has been with COVID. But how do you match up a former, let's say, an inmate, not just in a work release program, but how do you get them eligible and connect them with, you know, with a job opportunity?
Well, you know, before the pandemic, actually, the market on the Cape for employment was hurting. You know, so I had contractors calling me looking for people. You know, so you know, and we certainly provided some people, and I mean some of the folks were even willing to. They needed truck drivers, and they were even willing to train people so that they could get their license to operate, you know, the larger trucks. You know, so and you know, I found that people who are in recovery, once they're in recovery, they're really good workers because they want to keep working and keep their mind off of what their addiction was. So they really benefit, I think, when they get someone in recovery as an employee. And there's a lot of employers on the Cape that actually recognize that.
Well, in talking to the public right now, is there a process where you could provide, say, a recommendation as to your opinion as to somebody's opportunity for success?
Sure. Yeah, we can pretty much tell by their, you know, by how they act inside the correctional facility, and actually the parole board, when they come to see if someone's eligible for parole, they look at what programs they've taken and what they've done since they've been incarcerated, and if they're a part of the group that thinks they're tough guys and just stay in their cell and don't take advantage of any of the office, they don't get parole. You know,
and you would share that with a prospective employer?
Sure, I would make sure they got a good person, because I would like to keep them as a resource to hire people in the future. So I'm not going to give them a bad guy or gal.
Well, we've come to the end of this. Do you have a takeaway that you want folks to hear?
You know, we're there. We're in Barnstable. I get a lot of the credit, but I just have a tremendous staff that does a great job in all aspects of the Sheriff's Department. You know, we talked today about corrections, but there is a regional communications center and a Bureau of Criminal Investigation and a technical division which keeps the radios and the public safety side of things up and running, K-9 unit. You know, so we're busy, and everybody in all of those divisions does a great job for the people of Barnstable County.
Well, Jim, thanks you very much for coming and sharing the information. I'm sure that a lot of people did not know the depth of support that you give to people that, you know, that you see and that you know that come back in the community. So thank you very much. And I want to thank the viewers for watching. You've been watching another production of Bill's Bullpen at Born TV.